You told me God got a plan for me. And that's the reason why I keep going through all of this shit. Because he keep putting me through the test. When is the test gonna be over, bro? Because if I do something about it, I'm going to jail. I'm the one getting in trouble.
On Monday, March 24th, the murdered body of an Ohio teenager named Keimani Latigue was found in an abandoned and burned out house in Toledo. Her hands had been severed and she was nearly decapitated, and police are blaming her own father, Darnell Jones, for her brutal death. Latigue's family had reported her missing 6 days earlier. In the days leading up to the discovery of her body, Jones had pleaded with the public for help finding his daughter. He claimed he had last seen Latigue in the middle of the night on March 16th, when she called him from her grandmother's house and said she was scared. Latigue was home alone at the time, and Jones claimed he drove to the house due to concerns about a possible attempted break-in. The girl's grandmother arrived home later that night to find the residence in disarray. Latigue was nowhere to be found, and Jones gave police inconsistent statements about what had occurred when he visited the house. He has since been charged with his daughter's murder and is recovering from a gunshot wound after being shot during a SWAT standoff while attempting to evade law enforcement.
Hey, lady, come out over here. Come over here.
Okay.
Come over here.
A California mother is accused of committing the unthinkable crime of killing her own child following a recent 3-day trip to Disneyland. According to law enforcement, 48-year-old Saritha Ramaraju cut her son's throat at the end of the vacation, the day before he was due to return to his father's house. Saritha and her ex-husband had been sharing custody of the victim, Johnathan Ramaraju, since their divorce in 2018. She called the police and confessed to killing Johnathan at the La Quinta hotel room in Santa Ana, and she said she had taken an unknown number of pills. Upon arriving at the scene, officers found Johnathan's body on the bed, surrounded by souvenirs from the theme park. They also recovered a recently purchased large kitchen knife. Investigators surmised that the victim had been dead for several hours, indicating that Saritha had waited until he was beyond help to dial 911. Saritha was treated at a nearby hospital and booked into custody, where she remains held without bond on suspicion of murder and personally using a deadly weapon. Newly released body cam footage showing the arrest of a man accused of trying to honor kill his daughter has raised alarming allegations that he was preoccupied with his vehicle and showed no concern for the victim's well-being as he was taken into custody. 44-year-old Ihsan Ali allegedly attempted to strangle his teenage daughter to death outside her high school in Lacey, Washington in October 2024 because she refused to marry an older man in a foreign country. In the video, Ali could be heard shouting to his wife, Zahra Ali, in Arabic. He appeared to be concerned that the police would steal the couple's car based on a translated version of the footage provided by the Daily Mail. According to the news outlet, Ali shouted at his wife and daughter to drive the car away so the police wouldn't take it. Police say that Ali had threatened his daughter with an honor killing, prompting her to seek help from school officials, and that he showed up at the school and attacked the victim in front of her peers after finding out that she was seeking safety. Both he and Zahra are facing attempted murder, attempted kidnapping, and assault charges. British teenager Nicholas Prosper will spend at least 49 years in prison for massacring his own family in Luton, Bedfordshire, in September 2024. He fatally shot 48-year-old Juliana Falcon and his teenage siblings, Kyle and Giselle, during the early morning hours, prompting a concern call to law enforcement from a neighbor who overheard the gunfire. Officers located Prosper near the crime scene just in time to stop him from following through with his plan to commit even more carnage, including a school shooting. The young killer already had a history of disturbing behavior and a fascination with gore, and he had even been banned from a website dedicated to videos of people dying due to the extreme nature of his beliefs. Prosper pleaded guilty to all 3 murders and multiple weapon-related charges in February. His punishment of life with a minimum of nearly a half-century came on March 19th, ensuring that he'll be at least 69 years old before he has a chance at seeing freedom again. Dozens of people are dead and hundreds more are injured after a 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck central Myanmar shortly before 1 p.m. on Friday, March 27th. Buildings were destroyed and hospitals are so packed with injured survivors that supplies are running out and staff are struggling to accommodate everyone who needs treatment. Some patients have even been relocated to a nearby parking lot. The shaking was felt elsewhere throughout Southeast Asia, including hundreds of miles away in Bangkok, Thailand, where at least 3 people were killed, dozens remain missing, and the skyscraper collapsed to the ground. It may take a while to assess the true extent of the damages, especially in Myanmar, which has been plagued by challenges since the 2021 overthrow of its elected government by military leaders. Nearly 20 million people were already without adequate food or water before the earthquake, prompting the country's leaders to appeal to other nations for help. In the meantime, the death toll is expected to rise as the search for missing people continues. On Tuesday, March 25th, a 33-year-old Texas man named Demarqeyun Marquize Cox purposely crashed his mini four-wheeler into multiple Tesla cars throughout Texarkana, Texas. The unprovoked ramming spree began outside a Chinese restaurant, where Cox drove head-on into the side of a red Tesla, causing an estimated $1,000 worth of damage. He then drove to a nearby Lowe's home improvement store, where he damaged another Tesla. Police soon caught up with the accused hit-and-run quad bike rider who initially falsely identified himself. Cox was arrested on charges of failure to identify and felony criminal mischief, and additional charges may be forthcoming now that law enforcement has learned about a third damaged Tesla, which was found with the name Elon carved into the side. He was booked into the Bowie County Jail in lieu of a $105,000 bond and no longer appears to be in custody, indicating that he obtained the funding necessary to secure his release. 6 Russian nationals were killed and 39 survivors from Russia, Norway, Sweden, and India were rescued after a tourist submarine sank in the Egyptian Red Sea. The vessel, run by the excursion company Sindbad, began taking on water for unknown reasons off the Hurghada coast. Passengers were in the process of boarding more than a half-mile from shore when the submarine quickly started to submerge. People could be heard screaming in fear in harrowing footage of the incident, which showed tourists who had been standing on top of the vessel suddenly in ankle-deep water. A survivor told Russian media that the water had poured in through 2 open hatches, while another report claimed that the sub had struck a reef and lost pressure. At least 9 survivors were injured, including 4 who were left in critical condition. Authorities questioned the 5 crew members on duty who were in possession of the proper license and certificates. The investigation into the cause of the sinking is ongoing. 27-year-old bride-to-be Canada Rinaldi was randomly attacked during her bachelorette trip to Dallas, Texas with her 6 bridesmaids. The group was waiting for an Uber outside a nightclub at around 2 a.m. when a man approached a woman from behind and sucker-punched her in the head, hitting her with such force that she fell unconscious and hit her face on the pavement. Dashcam footage captured by a nearby Uber showed one of Rinaldi's friends trying to stop the attacker and also getting punched in the face. The assailant fled the scene and Rinaldi's terrified friends rushed to her aid while waiting for help to arrive. She woke up in an ambulance on the way to the emergency room where she received 8 stitches to the face. Rinaldi also suffered a broken nose, a black eye, a concussion, and lost 3 teeth. She told reporters that the attack not only ruined her vacation but caused her to no longer look forward to her wedding as she deals with mounting medical bills. No arrests have been made and the attack remains under investigation. A fight over a second-hand prom dress devolved into pure chaos in Gwinnett County, Georgia, resulting in the arrests of the 3 young women involved. The altercation occurred at a racetrack gas station roughly 30 miles outside of Atlanta, where an 18-year-old woman met with 20-year-old Morgan Flincham to sell her the dress. Flincham had previously owned the garment, but the victim's mother had helped pay for it, which was why it was in the victim's possession. At the beginning of the meeting, Flincham reportedly asked the victim if they could go into the bathroom so she could try the dress on. The victim agreed, only to be ambushed by one of Flincham's friends, who was lying in wait inside the restroom. Flincham's co-conspirator snatched the dress and ran, and the confrontation only intensified when the victim chased after the women. During the physical fight that ensued, one of the perps could be seen choke holding the victim, who flipped her attacker over and onto their back. Flincham and her accused accomplices, Kaylee George and Leela DeJagger, are all facing theft by taking charges, while Flincham and DeJagger are also charged with battery. 31-year-old California-based OnlyFans model Michaela Brashaye Rylaarsdam, aka Ashley Sinkal, is facing a second-degree murder charge for the death of 55-year-old Michael Dale, who was fatally suffocated during a kinky on-camera BDSM session at his Escondido home. Dale reportedly paid Rylaarsdam $11,000 to bind him in saran wrap and duct tape, which was determined to be the cause of his asphyxiation. Following his death, Rylaarsdam told police that she accepted the offer despite having no previous BDSM experience. Text messages revealed Dale's desire to be wrapped like a mummy and for a pair of women's boots to be glued to his feet. According to court documents, Rylaarsdam duct-taped and cling-wrapped Dale's face before securing a plastic bag around his head. She proceeded to perform certain acts with the camera rolling while Dale suffocated to death. By the time she realized something was wrong and called for help, it was too late to save Dale's life. The ill-fated counter occurred in 2023, but prosecutors did not officially file a case against Rylaarsdam until this month, following her arrest in February. A Connecticut stepmom is accused of holding her adult stepson captive for decades after the emaciated victim set their Waterbury home on fire in a desperate attempt to alert someone to his need for help. 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan was arrested on Wednesday, March 12th, roughly a month after firefighters responded to the blaze and discovered the shocking situation inside. They knew there were problems inside the home other than the fire when they pulled the visibly underweight victim out of the residence. The 32-year-old man, who weighed just 68 pounds, told investigators that he set the fire on purpose from inside a cramped storage space where he claimed Sullivan forced him to sleep. He accused his stepmother of holding him captive since the age of 11 and that he was starved, deprived of medical care and abused the entire time. The mistreatment reportedly worsened in the last year following the death of the victim's father. Sullivan is facing a laundry list of criminal charges including first-degree assault, second-degree kidnapping, first-degree unlawful restraint, cruelty to persons, and first-degree reckless endangerment. She is maintaining her innocence and plans to fight her case. Police in West Philadelphia are on the lookout for an irate driver who opened fire on 2 victims during a road rage incident just after 7 p.m. on Monday, March 10th. Described by authorities as a bearded black man in his 40s, the suspect shot a woman in her 20s and a teenage boy during a confrontation at an intersection. Both victims were treated for their injuries at a nearby hospital and are said to be in stable condition. Surveillance footage appears to show the man following the victim's car in a silver 2016 or 2017 Honda Civic with a missing passenger side hubcap. While sticking his head out the window, there's also visible damage to both of the vehicle's front quarter panels and a white vanity license plate on the front bumper. Police have released a security video in hopes that members of the public will come forward with information that will help identify and locate the suspect, who remains at large. 20-year-old University of Pittsburgh student Sudiksha Konanki vanished before sunrise while visiting the Dominican Republic for spring break with a group of classmates. She was last seen walking along a Punta Cana beach just after 4 o'clock in the morning on March 6th. Just prior to disappearing, Konanki went swimming with a 22-year-old lifeguard named Joshua Uribe. According to news reports, Uribe, who met Konanki that night, told police that a large wave had overpowered them and a strong tide had pulled them out into the ocean. He claimed that he had pulled Konanki toward the shore and that he last saw her walking toward dry land in knee-deep water at a diagonal angle. Uribe said that he believed Konanki had gathered her things and left, and that he didn't hear her response when he asked if she was okay because he was vomiting all the water that he had swallowed. He told investigators that he passed out as soon as he got to shore, and surveillance footage showed him returning to his room hours later. Authorities reportedly believe Konanki drowned, but for now, the search continues. A Texas teenager was reportedly murdered by a classmate at an apartment complex playground in Baytown following an argument with the accused killer on their school bus. According to police, the suspect went home, changed into black clothing, and retrieved a gun and a mask. He then went to the playground and shot the victim, Anaya Zachary, 4 times, killing her and injuring a woman nearby who was holding her child. According to a fellow student, Zachary had never bullied the boy, but they also never got along very well. The victim's godmother, Sonia Stanford, described Zachary as a good student with a sweet personality, good manners, and no history of disciplinary issues. Stanford told local news outlet KPRC2 that she doesn't blame the boy who is facing a murder charge, and that she even wants to forgive him. Instead, she blames the unnamed suspect's parents for failing to keep their gun locked up. In a statement, Baytown Police Chief John Stringer stressed the importance of conflict resolution as a way to prevent the type of deadly violence that the community is now grappling with the consequences of. 20-year-old Ukrainian model Maria Kovalchuk was found clinging to life along a roadside in Dubai on March 19th after vanishing 10 days earlier. She had gone missing after attending an adult party at a hotel, and her family had grown extremely concerned for her well-being after she missed a flight to Thailand 2 days after the event. Kovalchuk was covered in blood and suffering from severe injuries when she was found, including a broken spine and limbs. She was unable to talk and faces a lengthy road to recovery after undergoing 4 life-saving operations. The young woman's family believes she was trafficked among a group of men, then discarded along the side of the road after they were done satisfying their carnal needs. There's also speculation that she crossed paths with bad people while attending the previously mentioned party, where wealthy men are known to pay models to fulfill degrading and abusive fetishes. She remains unable to speak, and the highly publicized incident has sparked renewed warnings to young women to avoid these types of events known as porta potty parties. Las Vegas police found the murdered remains of little Johnai Ross while responding to an apartment complex during the early morning hours of Wednesday, March 26th. She had been stabbed multiple times, and her babysitter quickly landed at the top of the suspect list. Officers were called to the scene by Johnai's father, Jeremy Ross, who arrived home from work and noticed that the babysitter, 41-year-old Marketta Phillips, was acting out of it. He discovered his mortally wounded daughter surrounded by knives on her bed and immediately began CPR while calling 911. Despite his efforts, Janai succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Phillips fled the scene on foot before police arrived and was apprehended nearby. Just a week earlier, she had been placed on an involuntary emergency psychiatric hold, yet she was entrusted with Janai's care despite her recent troubling behavior. Jeremy told the Las Vegas Review-Journal that he had had an on-and-off romantic relationship with Phillips, but that he didn't know she was a crazy nutcase. Phillips remains held without bail at the Clarke County Detention Center on an open murder charge. Two Berkeley Township, New Jersey residents are fighting for their lives after 54-year-old John Adamo fatally shot his next-door neighbors and then succumbed to a bullet wound himself, described by other neighbors as a combative alcoholic who was entangled in a years-long feud with the victims. Adamo killed Tom and Jill Kwatkowski shortly before 5:00 p.m. on Monday, March 10th. The Kwatkowskis were airlifted to the emergency room and are reportedly fighting for their lives. Meanwhile, a SWAT team attempted to negotiate with Adamo for 2.5 hours before blowing his front door off and finding him dead inside his $1 million home. Local residents believe Adamo may have been triggered by surveillance cameras and no trespassing signs that the Kwatkowskis had recently installed on their property. According to one neighbor, the cameras were pointed toward Adamo's home and the signs called him and his wife out by name. Sources familiar with the parties involved praised the Kwatkowskis while telling reporters that Adamo had been estranged from his family for years due to his alleged alcoholism. Whether the victims pull through remains to be seen. Better known as Say So P, 27-year-old Tennessee rapper Latorian Hunt was shot to death in downtown Memphis on Saturday, March 22nd. Another victim, 34-year-old rapper Albert Walker Mondane, aka Source Walker, was injured in the gunfire, which was described by police as a targeted crime. The broad daylight shooting occurred outside a West End hotel shortly before 3 in the afternoon, when the suspects exited a vehicle and opened fire on Hunt and Mondane. Hunt was struck with multiple bullets while Mondane was shot in the thigh. In a post paying his respects to his fallen friend, Mondane mentioned how his childhood home was shot up numerous times throughout his life, and that the violence is nothing new. An arrest warrant has been issued for 21-year-old Jaden Dandridge, who's wanted on 1 count of first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, auto theft, and 2 counts of employing a firearm in the commission of a felony. On March 14th, police were called to the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, where they encountered an unclothed woman covered in someone else's blood. Later identified as Samantha Palma, she was reportedly in the throes of a manic episode and had stabbed the manager in the head with his own pencil when he tried to get her under control. She is also accused of biting the manager and stabbing another victim and was found hiding behind an emergency door by responding members of law enforcement. Footage of Palmer's outburst appears to show her throwing water, breaking a display screen, prancing around the airport and hurling profanities at strangers. While speaking with the woman who called herself the goddess Venus and said that she identified as various Disney princesses, police learned that she had not taken her medication that day. She was taken into custody on a mental health hold and is facing an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon charge. A top-ranking MS-13 leader is in federal custody following his arrest in Prince William County, Virginia, on Thursday, March 27th. 24-year-old Henrry Osui Biatoro Santos was arrested during a raid by FBI agents at his mother's home in Woodbridge, roughly 23 miles outside Washington, D.C. He refused to surrender willingly and was dragged out of the residence by members of the SWAT team, who distracted him using a stun grenade. Federal agents found an arsenal of weapons inside his home, including at least 4 guns, 2 silencers, and ammunition. Viatoro is thought to possibly be the highest-ranking MS-13 member on the East Coast. Prior to his capture, he had been in the U.S. illegally for more than 10 years. Authorities believe he was recruited into the gang during middle school, and his capture is being hailed by U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi as a milestone achievement in her quest to fulfill President Trump's assigned goal of making the country safer. Bondi has vowed to continue pursuing MS-13 members until the gang is completely dismantled and no longer has a notable presence on America's streets. South African test pilot James O'Connor was killed on March 22nd while performing a routine display during an air show in the town of Saldanha. Spectators watched in horror as the nearly 70-year-old military aircraft he was flying suddenly lost altitude and nosedived into the ground, erupting into a cloud of smoke and debris. The crowd could be heard gasping as the accident occurred and were urged to remain calm after the impact. O'Connell's death came as a shock to the global aviation community, where he was well respected among fellow flying experts and enthusiasts. Describing O'Connell as a highly qualified test pilot, airshow commentator, and good friend, Brian Emenis speculated that he wouldn't have tried to do anything he didn't think he could handle. But definitive answers will have to wait for the time being while the cause of the tragedy remains under investigation. A Newton County, Indiana woman is sharing a harrowing story of survival. After spending 6 days trapped in her wrecked car praying that help would eventually arrive, 41-year-old mother of 3 Breionna Cassell was found clinging to life by a Good Samaritan nearly a week after falling asleep at the wheel and crashing into a ditch. The impact of the collision crushed the car's dashboard, pinning her in place and shattering her left arm and legs. Cassell's cell phone was just out of reach and the battery had died long before she was found. She was just yards away from a busy bridge, but was out of sight and went unnoticed by the hundreds of motorists who passed by overhead on a daily basis. Cassell later told the New York Times that she thought she was going to die as she waited helplessly for rescue. At times she could hear her own husband calling out her name, but she was too weak and dehydrated to respond loudly enough to catch his attention. She was airlifted to the emergency room and is expected to make a full recovery. A nearly 350-pound Michigan woman has been sentenced to prison time for sitting on her 91-pound foster son and crushing him to death because he was misbehaving. 48-year-old Jennifer Lee Wilson had been looking after Dakota Levi Stevens for just a month when she called 911 in April 2024 and reported that the young boy had become motionless. She was reportedly in a visibly distraught state, as she told police that Stevens had been acting up after fleeing to a neighbor's house earlier that morning. According to news reports, Stevens had asked the neighbors to adopt him, claiming that his caretakers hit him in the face. Wilson admitted to lying on top of Stevens, who was less than one-third her weight, for several minutes to prevent him from leaving again. Stevens eventually stopped screaming for help, and Wilson claimed that she thought he was faking injury until she noticed that his eyelids had gone pale. She pleaded guilty to reckless homicide and was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with 1 year suspended to be served on probation. The son of a retired Suffolk County Long Island police detective is facing a murder charge for fatally shooting his father during a fight inside their Dix Hills home. According to police, 43-year-old Christopher Miller killed 76-year-old John Jack Miller shortly before 7:30 in the morning on Wednesday, March 19th. The trouble reportedly began 2 days earlier following Christopher's release from the hospital after a car accident. He had recently moved into his father's house following a divorce. After not hearing from Christopher by Tuesday, the elder Miller reported his son missing, which apparently led to the deadly argument that occurred the following morning. Responding officers found Christopher hiding in a shed after a concerned homeowner witnessed his suspicious behavior and called 911. Upon returning to the residence with the suspect in tow, police found Jack dead in a pool of blood. Described as a great guy and a pillar of the community by his neighbors, Christopher admitted to killing his father but pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He remains held without bail pending his next court hearing. 39-year-old mother of three Danielle Baxter is facing criminal charges for killing her husband. 38-year-old SEPTA train engineer Jordan Baxter, who was gunned down at the couple's home in Philadelphia's Roxborough neighborhood. Police discovered Jordan's body on a plastic sheet between two cars in the driveway, with the suspected murder weapon on his chest. He had been shot in the back of the head. Based on blood evidence, investigators believed he was killed in the home and then dragged outside. Danielle was arrested the following day on suspicion of murder and abuse of a corpse. While her alleged motive remains unclear, news outlets reported that she had made cryptic Facebook posts just days before Jordan's death. In one post, she wrote about women supposedly plotting on her marriage. A neighbor told Fox 29 that the Baxters were separated and that Jordan was not living at the home when he was killed. Danielle was denied bail and remains in custody, pending her preliminary hearing, which is scheduled for April 7th. A prominent anesthesiologist is accused of trying to murder his wife along a hiking trail on the Hawaiian island of Oahu. 46-year-old Gerhardt Konig was arrested after the 36-year-old victim told police that he had attacked her for refusing to take a selfie with him. She said that Konig was standing extremely close to the trail's edge and that it made her feel uncomfortable. According to an arrest report, Konig shoved the victim into some bushes, struck her in the head repeatedly with a rock, and smashed her face into the ground while she screamed for help. The victim also claimed that she had seen Konig preparing to inject her with 2 syringes filled with an unknown substance, but that she had managed to take them away. Overhearing the woman's screams, nearby hikers came to her aid and called 911, later telling police that Konig was on top of the victim when they found her. She was taken to the hospital in serious but stable condition, and Konig is currently in jail on an attempted second-degree murder charge with bail set at $5 million. A New Mexico boy who is barely a teenager is facing a murder charge for killing 63-year-old Scott Dwight Habermel, who was fatally mowed down by a stolen car while cycling to work in May of 2024. The incident occurred shortly before 5 o'clock in the morning when, according to police, Johnathan Overbay intentionally struck the victim with the stolen vehicle. Law enforcement learned of Overbay's alleged involvement in the crime after footage of the murder circulated on social media. In the video, a young driver could be clearly heard saying that he was about to hit Habermel and stepping on the gas pedal, while a teenage passenger, William Garcia, urged him not to go too fast and to just bump the victim. Another young passenger waved a gun and laughed as the car struck Habermel, but the situation is no laughing matter to prosecutors, who charged Overbay in mid-March following an extensive investigation into the matter. Overbay reportedly has an extensive legal record which includes his suspected involvement in a previous shooting and burglary, among other crimes. 28-year-old Conor McIntyre became an overnight celebrity of sorts following his portrayal in the Netflix drama Toxic Town, which tells the story of 15 kids who were born with abnormalities due to their pregnant mother's exposure to dangerous toxins in Corby, England. But he is now known for far less flattering reasons as Northamptonshire police appealed to the public for information regarding his whereabouts. Law enforcement is searching for McIntyre in connection with an assault that occurred in Kettering in January. News of the investigation came to light after a series of social media posts by his ex-partner, who accused him of forcing his way into her home after she ignored his messages. The woman claimed that McIntyre cut his face in the process of trying to break in, causing blood to spill everywhere. and leaving her residence looking like a murder scene. Surveillance video from the incident appears to show McIntyre screaming in the street while covered in blood. A police notice states that officers would like to speak with him regarding the occurrence and encourages anyone with information to come forward and share what they know. As billionaire Elon Musk shows no signs of scaling back on his controversial involvement with US government affairs, a growing number of activists are finding ways to show their discontent. Included among them is 24-year-old Daniel Clarke-Pounder, a career mechanic who accidentally set himself on fire while attempting to burn down a Tesla charging station in North Charleston, South Carolina. Witnesses reported seeing Clarke-Pounder throwing 5 Molotov cocktails at the station, one of which set him ablaze. According to the US Department of Justice, the suspect also spray-painted "Long live Ukraine" at the crime scene. While the extent of Clarke-Pounder's injuries is unclear, he managed to flee in the initial aftermath of the crime and was apprehended later that day. He's facing federal arson-related charges and could face a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison if convicted as charged. In a statement, acting U.S. Attorney Brooke B. Andrews said that the DOJ will continue to defend the public's right to protest peacefully, but that these kinds of attacks have no place in our community. Nearly 60 people are dead and another 150 are injured after a fire at an illegal club in North Macedonia caused a fatal stampede. Footage from the establishment, known as Club Pulse, shows the fire being started by a pyrotechnics display gone wrong during a musical performance. The flames began to spread quickly, prompting hundreds of clubgoers to instantaneously make a beeline for the exit. According to news reports, the blaze took place in a warehouse that previously functioned as a carpet factory. The building lacked even basic fire safety features, including sprinklers, and was reportedly locked when the fire broke out. Outraged civilians are now calling on law enforcement to hold those who were running the unlicensed club accountable for arguably preventable fatalities. An MS-13 gang member with a lengthy rap sheet was killed in a shootout with police while out on bail for previous crimes in Puebla, Colorado. 34-year-old Billy Soto had 14 prior felony arrests, was facing multiple unrelated felony charges, and was wanted for an attempted murder charge when he opened fire on the cops in February. He was killed in the exchange of gunfire, and all 3 officers survived with serious injuries but are facing lengthy roads to recovery. While announcing Soto's responsibility for the shooting on March 18th, Police Chief Chris Nola blamed the state's soft-on-crime policies for the fact that Soto was roaming free to begin with, despite his extensive criminal history. As far as Nola is concerned, Soto should have been in jail. The exasperated lawman said that he's sick of the state's failure to hold low-level criminals accountable, which he believes would help to prevent more serious crimes like the shootout, which left 3 of his officers severely harmed. While responding to a call at a Houston, Texas home in mid-March, police encountered 34-year-old Chance Zane Chavez, who was covered in blood. In a bedroom, officers found the body of Chance's wife, 32-year-old Kristen Chavez. She had been beaten to death with a clothing iron, and Chance is now facing a murder charge in connection with the case. Hours earlier, Chance had stolen Kristen's 4 dogs and abandoned them along the Katy Freeway. One of the dogs, a dachshund puppy named Peaches, remains missing. The other 3 were found by friends and volunteers. Chance Chavez is currently being held at the Harris County Jail with bonds set at $500,000. Kristen's mother, Laura Bell, told local news station KRIV-TV that the marriage between her daughter and Chance was bad, but that Kristen stayed hoping things would change. Bell is now hoping that Chance remains behind bars throughout the duration of his case and that he's held properly accountable for his actions. AKA Yella Beezy. A Texas rap battle that resulted in the death of one musician has landed another behind bars on suspicion of murder. Melvin Noble, aka Mo 3, was gunned down along a Texas interstate in November 2020 by a man named Kewan Dontrell White. According to reports, Noble was shot 9 times in the back while trying to escape the gunman. Authorities are now saying that White was hired by 33-year-old rapper Yella Beezy, whose real name is Marquise Conway. White, who is already serving a 9-year sentence for gun charges stemming from the shooting, was recently arrested for murder. In the meantime, Conway has been indicted by a grand jury on a capital murder charge and remains in custody without bond at the Dallas County Jail. A 37-year-old Florida man is accused of stalking and other crimes after authorities say he left 2 decapitated cats' heads on a Lee County resident's mailbox. Investigators identified Robert James Luther III as the prime suspect in the case based on cell phone location data, which reportedly put him in the vicinity of the Bonita Springs home where the crime occurred. A search of Luther's phone turned up disturbing evidence further pointing toward his possible guilt, including videos depicting the beheaded felines, and which feature audio of the suspect talking about the crime. It's unclear whether Luther and the homeowner knew each other, or what the nature of their previous connection, if any, is. Law enforcement has yet to reveal a motive for the despicable act. Luther was charged with 2 counts of aggravated stalking and 2 counts of aggravated cruelty to animals. He does not appear to be in custody at this time, indicating that he's most likely free on bail as he awaits his next court date. Best known by his stage name, the Rocket Man Valencia, California daredevil Chachi Valencia is recovering from serious injuries after a human cannonball act went wrong in front of a crowd of spectators earlier this month. The botched performance occurred at the Riverside County Fair and National Date Festival, in Indio, where Valencia missed his designated landing net and came crashing down onto the hard concrete below. He was blown off course by a powerful gust of wind, which caused him to initially land on the wrong part of the net. Valencia was catapulted back into the air before he made his hard landing, which left him with broken ribs, a lacerated liver, and a wrist injury. In addition to suffering from physical pain, the sixth-generation performer faces hefty medical bills, which are adding to his existing stress. Speaking with NBC5, Valencia said he blacked out after bouncing off the net and that he has no memory of what happened between then and when he woke up in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. For now, his only job is to rest at home while he recuperates from his injuries. 56-year-old convicted murderer Wendell Arden Grissom was executed on March 20th by the state of Oklahoma for killing a woman during a home invasion gone wrong 20 years ago. In November 2005, Grissom and a homeless hitchhiker named Jesse Johns forced their way into the Watonga area home of Drew Kopf, where Grissom fatally shot 23-year-old Amber Matthews in front of Kopf's two young children. Kopf, who survived a gunshot wound to the wrist, told police that Grissom laughed as he shot his way into the residence. She said she begged Grissom to stop and offered to cooperate with any of his demands, but he just kept laughing and shooting and laughing. Prior to receiving his lethal injection, Grissom enjoyed a last meal consisting of Canadian bacon supreme pizza, a pint of ice cream, and Coca-Cola. He apologized to his surviving victims during his final words, calmly stating, "I pray that you all can forgive me, not for my sake, for your sake." Grissom went on to say that he considered his execution to be a mercy, adding, "I'm going to be all right." 34-year-old U.S. military veteran Jordan Michael Henning has been found guilty of killing his wife, 37-year-old Sergeant First Class Ashley Henning, at their Kentucky home in June of 2023. He was accused of murder, but the jury convicted him of a reduced first-degree manslaughter charge. After hearing about how he fatally shot the victim during her birthday party and seeing footage of the incident, which was captured entirely on camera. In the video, Henning could be seen reloading his gun and shooting Ashley again before spitting on her lifeless body. The jury's decision came after Henning testified that he shot Ashley following years of spousal abuse, claiming that Ashley had gone as far as biting him and shoving him down staircases. Henning's conviction and sentence came as a major disappointment to the victim's cousin, U.S. Navy Chief John Williams, who described the outcome of the case as unspeakable, unthinkable, and disgusting. He called the jurors cowards and was admonished by the judge for the direction his words were going in, giving him no choice but to continue with a watered-down version of what he really wanted to say. In a surprising update to a story we've covered before on this channel, a former Tennessee police officer who was fired for her multiple extramarital trysts with colleagues is now working as a pharmacy technician. 29-year-old Maegan Hall made national news headlines in 2023 after she lost her job with the Laverna Police Department for her wild romps with at least 6 male co-workers. She went on to win a $500,000 lawsuit settlement after accusing her former colleagues of grooming her to be available at their disposal. Maegan was licensed to work as a pharmacy technician prior to joining the police force and has reportedly gone back to her previous profession now that she's no longer working as a cop. She's still living in the same house she was sharing with her husband, Jedediah, at the time the scandal broke. Jedediah vocally supported his wife in previous interviews, but it's unclear whether the couple are still together, as they both appear to be living a low-key existence after unexpectedly landing in the spotlight more than 2 years ago. A Tennessee husband stands accused of murdering an 18-year-old man after catching the victim in bed with his wife during the early morning hours. 41-year-old Johnathan Belk is facing criminal charges for fatally stabbing Billie Jean Floyd, as well as for the stabbing of his 31-year-old wife, Jada Golston, who survived the attack. According to court documents, Golston initially told police that a man had jumped on Floyd, whose body was found stuffed in a garbage can outside her and Belk's home. Officers arrived at the residence to find Belk standing at the doorway covered in blood, at which point they learned that he was Golston's husband. Belk reportedly told investigators that he was worried that he might have ruined his marriage because he offed Floyd, but he's facing much bigger problems now, including a potential lifetime behind bars, and is currently being held without bond at the Sequatchie County Jail as he awaits a bond hearing which is scheduled for March 21st. In the latest of what seems like an endless stream of poorly behaved air travelers in recent years, an American Airlines passenger's bizarre behavior was recorded on video during a seemingly possessed outburst. On March 10th, 31-year-old Delange Augustin began acting out just moments after the Miami-bound aircraft took off from Savannah, Georgia, prompting concerned onlookers to intervene out of a concern for the safety of everyone aboard. Footage captured by a witness shows Augustin yelling, wildly swinging his arms and legs, and swallowing a rosary while passengers pinned him to the floor. In the meantime, his sister stood nearby and chanted. Rob Rosenberg, who helped subdue Augustin, described the chanting as eerie hymns and the ordeal in general as a very, very, very disturbing scene. He also referred to the situation as probably the most disturbing thing he had ever seen. Rosenberg later told CBS Miami that he initially became concerned when Augustin began yelling about demons. Thanks to the swift intervention of onlookers, no one was seriously harmed. Augustin was treated at the hospital for the rosary beads he ingested and is facing multiple charges including misdemeanor battery and criminal property damage. A Montana family is mourning the untimely demise of 37-year-old husband and father Jeff Zine, who plunged to his death on Monday, March 10th after a ski lift malfunction at Red Lodge Mountain in Carbon County. Zine was riding alone on a 3-person chair when a mechanical problem sent him plummeting to the ground below. He died from his injuries at a nearby hospital, leaving behind a wife, Megan, and a 2-year-old son. While authorities have not specified the exact nature of the mechanical issue or how it caused Zine to fall out of his seat, outdoor conditions were reportedly rough, with winds gusting in excess of 50 miles per hour on the morning of the accident. Some of the resort's lifts were closed due to the inclement weather, and Zine's fall prompted a large-scale evacuation of the lifts that were still open, with ski patrol units lowering occupants to the ground one by one using a manual rope system. A spokesperson declined to comment on the matter, citing an ongoing investigation. 40-year-old Alexandra Bialousow of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, is facing criminal charges for allegedly starting a forest fire that consumed over 2,000 acres of wilderness and put hundreds of homes at risk. Her arrest came after neighbors within the Covington Lakes subdivision claimed to see her starting the blaze near a tree line in her backyard fire pit. Bialousow reportedly failed to take proper precautions to prevent the fire's debris from spreading to nearby foliage, which enabled the blaze to quickly spread to a neighboring property. She's also accused of lacking garden tools or an appropriate water source to control the fire with. Before long, the flames have spread out of control, engulfing the tree line and spewing smoke into the sky. According to the most recent available updates, the fire is 55% contained. Bialousow was arrested on 2 arson-related charges and is currently free after posting a $15,000 bond. We previously covered the infamous Delphi murders case, which ended with the conviction and life imprisonment of suspect Richard Allen for the horrific double murder of 2 teenage girls in Delphi, Indiana. In a much-anticipated update, a fuller version of an infamous cell phone video featuring the killer has been released by our website, advocating for Allen's innocence. In the 43-second clip, victims Abigail Abby Williams and Liberty Libby German could be heard whispering to each other about the suspected killer, who was following them from a short distance. One of the girls, identified as Williams, whispered, "Is he right there? Don't leave me," before German commented about how the man had a gun. German then nervously said out loud, "There's no path going there, so we have to go down here," before the man in the background ordered the girls to go down the hill, at which point the video ended. Although Allen confessed to the murders, which took place in February 2017, he is now claiming that his confession was coerced and is reportedly in the process of appealing his case. An Iowa man is facing a first-degree murder charge in the cold case disappearance of his former girlfriend, Barbara Lenz, who vanished in 1989 at the age of 31. 61-year-old Robert Davis, who was 26 at the time, allegedly threatened to kill Lenz if she ever left him. And although the victim's body has never been found, prosecutors apparently believe they have enough evidence to secure a conviction against the accused killer. Davis is the last known person to see Lenz alive. He told investigators that he dropped Lenz off at her Woodbine apartment ahead of her plans to visit the father of her young daughter. Police later discovered that Davis had a violent history, including previous assaults against Lenz. He admitted to some of the incidents, including one which occurred in public. Witnesses reported Davis's strange behavior in the days following Lenz's disappearance. One person even claimed to see Davis and his brother burying something wrapped in plastic at a rural property. He's currently being held without bail at the Harrison County Jail as he awaits his next court date. A young man is dead and another is facing potential prison time following a hazing that went awry among members of a fraternity at Southern University in Louisiana. Charges against additional suspects are forthcoming, according to a Baton Rouge police spokesperson who provided details of the incident during a recent press conference. 20-year-old fraternity pledge and marching band member Caleb Wilson died in late February from a fatal seizure that occurred during a hazing ritual, which involved being repeatedly punched in the chest at a local warehouse. According to law enforcement, witnesses initially lied about the nature and location of McCrae's medical emergency, claiming that he had simply collapsed in a public park. 23-year-old Caleb McCrae turned himself in after being identified as a suspect and is currently free on bond while facing manslaughter and criminal hazing charges. 2 other fraternity members, Isaiah Smith and Kyle Thurman, were subsequently booked on criminal felony hazing charges and are also currently free on bond. All 3 men are accused of changing Wilson's clothing before they took him to the emergency room and leaving the hospital before they could be questioned about what happened.